The Occult Anatomy of Man, Part 3. The Spinal Column. Connecting the two worlds, heaven above and the sphere of darkness below, is the spinal column. A chain of 33 segments protecting with them the spinal cord. This ladder of bone plays a very important part in the religious symbolism of the ancient. It is often referred to as the winding road or stairway. Sometimes it is called the serpent, at other time the wind or scepter. The Hindu teach that there are 3 distinct canals or tubes in the spinal system. They call them Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. These tubes connect the lower generative center of the body with the brain. The Greeks symbolize them by the caduceus, or winged staff or Hermes. This consists of a long rod, the central sushumna, which ended in a knob or ball, the bones of the medulla oblongata. On each side of this knob are wings arched over, used to represent the 2 lobes of the cerebrum. Up this staff and twist around it win 2 serpents, one black and the other white. These represent the Inda and Pingala. The ancient Hindu have a legend concerning the goddess Kundalini, in which it is said that she descended by means of a ladder or cord from heaven to a little island floating in the great sea. Connecting this with embryology, it is evident that the ladder or cord represents the umbilical cord, while the little island is the solar plexus. When the ladder is cut away from heaven, the goddess flees in terror to a cave, sacral plexus, where she hides far from the sight of man. Like Amaterasu, the Japanese goddess of the shining lace, she must be lured from her cave, from while she is there, refuse to come forth, the world is in darkness. Kundalini is a Sanskrit word meaning a serpentine or twisting gas or force. This force, so the Eastern sage claim, can be down up through the central spinal canal, the sushumna. When this essence strikes the brain, it opens the center of spiritual consciousness and inner perception, bringing with its spiritual illumination. The system of culture whereby this is made possible is the most secret teaching of the Eastern saint. For they realize that the spiral twisting force is not only illuminating but, like the serpent which is a symbol, also a deadly poison. Smattering of Eastern occultism are coming all the time into Western world, but we are sorry to say that they are bringing with them endless suffering and sorrow. For this great truth in the hand of individuals incapable of rightly understanding, or applying them, destroy intelligence and reason. Along the spine are a number of nerves, ganglia and plexuses. All of these have their place in religious symbolism. For example, we are taught that the early Jew called the sacral plexus and the sacrococcygeal ganglion the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. There is a small plexus in the region of the kidney, called the Sagittarial Plexus, which the ancient knew as the city of Tarsus, where St. Paul fought with the beast. Higher occultism teaches that the lotus blossom, nervous center on the spine, are reflection or negative pole bearing witness of 7 great positive centers of consciousness located in the brain. These 7 function to the center of the spine in approximately the same way that the 7 spirits before the throne function to the planetary body. The disciple is warned not to work with the center around the spine, but to labor instead with their true ruler, the center in the brain. The wandering of the children of Israel in the wilderness, the pilgrimage of the Mohammedan to Mecca, the endless pilgrimage of Hindu holy men who spend their life going from one shrine to another, represent the pilgrimage of the spirit fire Kundalini through the nerve system along the spine. By certain specification, force is turned into this center one after the other, until when they seen clairvoyantly they are great, flower-like area from which light rays stream like petals. Each of these lotus blossoms has a different number of petals according to the number of nerves which branch out from it. It is said that the Logos, when the time came to create the material universe, entered a state of deep meditation, centralizing his thought power upon the 7 flower-like center of the 7th world. Gradually, his force descended from the brain, which was the great superior world, and striking this flower one after the other, gave birth to the lower world. When at last his spirit fire struck the lower center of the physical world was created, and his fire was at the base of the spine, when the world returned to him again and once more becomes supreme in consciousness, it will be because he withdrew the life from this 7th center, beginning with the lowest and return it again to the brain. Thus the path of evolution for all living things is to raise this fire, whose descent made the manifestation in this lower world possible, and whose rising bring them into harmony once more with the superior world. This myth of the life force that came down and took upon itself world is found among all the civilized nations of the earth. This is the Hiram Abiff who built the Masonic temple, the bodies, and was then slain by 3 vehicles which he formed. This is likewise the Christ, slain for the sin of the world. Because of the fact that this spinal fire is a twisting serpentine force, the snake has been used in all parts of the world to represent the world savior. The Horus, worn by the Egyptian priests upon their forehead, was symbolic of Kundalini, the sacred cobra, who when was raised in the wilderness saved all who gaze upon her, Moses and the present serpent. As the brain is the center of the divine world, so the solar plexus is the center of the human world. For representing semi-consciousness, it links the unconsciousness below with the consciousness above. Man is not only capable of thinking with his brain, he is capable of a certain phase of thought through the nerve center of the solar plexus. It will probably be wise at this point to describe the difference between a medium and a clairvoyant. To the average person, there is no difference, but to the mystic, these 2 phases of spiritual sight are separated by the entire span of human evolution. A clairvoyant is one who has raised the spinal serpent into the brain, and by his growth earned the right of perceiving the invisible world with the aid of the 3rd eyes, or pineal gland. This organ of consciousness, which millions of years ago connected the man with the invisible world, closed during the Lemurian period, when the objective senses began to develop. The occultist, however, by the process of development hinted at before, may reopen his eyes and by means of it explore the invisible world. Clairvoyants are not born, they are made. Mediums are not made, they are born. The clairvoyant can become such only after years, sometimes life of self-preparation on the other land. The medium, by sitting in the darkened room or by other similar practices, may secure results in a few days. The medium uses the solar plexus as a mirror, and upon its sensitive nerve or reflected picture recorded in the invisible ethers. To the spleen, which is the gateway to the etheric body, the medium permits decanate intelligence to come into his spiritual constitution. The result being voices and other spirit manifestation. Automatic writing is gained by permitting the etheric arm of an outside intelligence to control temporarily the physical arm of the medium. This is not possible until the medium removes his own etheric double from the arm. For two things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. The process of periodically separating the life force from the physical arm is very dangerous, often resulting in paralysis. Mediumship is unnatural to man, while clairvoyance is the natural result of growth and unfolding of the spiritual nature. There are 100 mediums to one clairvoyant, for the clairvoyant can become such only through self-mastery and the exertion of tremendous power, while the weaker, the more sickly and the more nervous an individual is, the better medium he makes. The clairvoyant is unfolding his mind by filling it with useful knowledge, while the first instruction given the would-be medium is make your mind a blank. The reason mediumship through the solar plexus is a retrogression may be summed up as follows. The group spirit who control the destiny of the animal kingdom govern them through picture drawn against the solar plexus. For the animal has no self-conscious mind. As a result, instead of thinking with its own brain, it thinks with the brain of the group spirit to whom it is attacked by invisible magnetic cord. This cord conveys their impression and photographs them upon the sympathetic nervous system. Having no will of its own, the animal is incapable of combating these urges and consequently obeys them implicitly. Man governs himself through the cerebrospinal nervous system because he has developed individuality and the sympathetic system no longer rule him. Opening himself to impulses to the solar plexus area, the medium is thwarting his own growth by preventing the cerebrospinal nervous system from controlling his destiny. Man has always liked to lean on external things. He hates to face each problem and solve it with the brain God gave him. He consequently leaned on the invisible world, asking them to help him to accomplish the labor which he should do by his own effort. Thousands of people must carry the karmic responsibility of the medium, for many follow this calling because hundreds of people want to talk to deceased relatives or get inside tips on the stock exchange. Those who by their patronage encourage things of which they do not themselves approve are personally responsible for the injury with their selfishness as thus permitted other person to inflict upon themselves. The difference, therefore, between mediumship and clairvoyance is about half the length of the spinal column. It is the difference between negative and positive. It is the difference between the midnight of the seance room and the noonday of the temple. All of the organs within the body of man have their religious significance. The heart with its chamber is itself a temple standing upon the mountain of the diaphragm. The spleen with its little umbrella shaped body collects the sun's ray as charge of the etheric body. It is this etheric body, coiled within the spleen, that injects the white blood corpuscle into the circulatory. We know that the human body has been the inspiration for nearly all mechanical contrivance, hinge or copy from. La human body, likewise thy ball, all socket joint. We are taught that the first plumbing was reproduced from the arterial and venous circulatory system. Hundreds of machines and implements have been inspired by the subtle working of our own vehicle. From the human body is the most marvelously constructed machine that the human man can study. The close relationship between the generative system below and the brain above, for the brain is a positive generative system, is of course due to the spine connecting them. At a certain time, a number of little doors which now separate the brain from the generative system are open, and the Sushumna become an open tunnel so that every impulse is carried immediately to both ends of the body. It is for this reason that the candidate assumes the vow of celibacy, for the close connection existing in the advanced disciple between the brain and the reproductive system necessitate an absolute conservation of all life energy. The tonsils are directly connected with the generative system. In fact, they are part of its positive ball in the brain. The custom of vaccinating healthy children and cutting out normal tonsils on general principle should be reconsidered. Most tonsils are inflicted as a result of the child eating too many sweets during the first year of the life. The moral is, don't cut out the tonsil, cut out the sweet. Many parents are responsible for the illness of their children. Through either ignorance or indulgence, they allow the infantile consciousness, as yet uncontrolled by its higher vehicle, to destroy itself before life fairly begins. When children are sick during the early years of life, the physician will often find the cause of the ailment in the parent, and the father or mother, not the children, should be dosed with pills. If the stomach is kept in proper condition, the tonsil will give very little trouble. The absolute economy exhibited by nature in the building of all its structures should be the sufficient proof that the Lord was not wasting his time when he made tonsil and appendixes. He apparently had reason for making them, but these poor, unfounding organs have become a goldmine to medical scientists who remove them at the slightest provocation. We are taught that the vertical position assumed by the human body, which forces the content of the intestinal tract to travel part of the time uphill, is the reason for the appendix, which is missing in creatures of horizontal carriage. Every organ not only has its visible purpose, but also an invisible spiritual purpose. And the individual is to be admired who manage to go through the life preserving intact as many as possible of his original anatomical part and member. While on the subject of the type of science to the human body, we might add the decimal system is the result of primitive man counting on his finger, whereby 10 became the unit of enumeration. The ancient cubit also was the distance between the elbow and end of the second finger, or approximately 18 inches. So it goes back to the study of things until we find that nearly everything which man has surrounded himself is an adaptation from the body which God surrounded his spirit. Man is gradually gaining control not only over the organ of his body, but also over their function. Science states that certain organs function automatically or mechanically, but occultism realizes that there is nothing mechanical about the function of the human body. Let us take as an example a workman throwing a piece of iron among the wheel and lever a smoothly working machine. There is a grinding crash and the machine stops. If on the other hand you figuratively throw a monkey wrench into the human body, it will immediately begin the process of throwing it back at you. It will surround the foreign element with a coating and try to absorb it. If this is impossible, it will try to eject it through some channel imported for that purpose. If this means fail, it will in many cases accustom itself to the presence of the obstacle and keep right on walking anyway. This shows unmistakably that the organic part of man possesses some inherent form of intelligence. Therefore, they are not machines, for no mechanical device is capable of intelligence. Paracelsus, the great Swiss physician, who after many years in the Far East returned to Switzerland to teach medicine, first gave to the European world his concept of the natural spirit. He thought that the function of nature were under the control of little creatures who were invisible to the normal senses, but who, working to the kingdom of life, minerals, plants, animals, and part of the human body, kept all of this evolving in an intelligent way. Under the control of the great celestial hierarchy of Scorpio, which has charge of the whole body building in nature, these elements are the invisible intelligence governing the human body and its function. As a result of man's ever-evolving consciousness, is acquiring more complete control over the function of his various organs. There are two kinds of muscle, voluntary and involuntary. The difference being that the voluntary muscles, which are controlled by the conscious mind of the individual, are fibers running two-way and crushing each other, while those which are involuntary are without cross fiber. The heart used to be considered an involuntary muscle, but it is now beginning to show cross fiber, thus foreshadowing the day when man will consciously and intelligently regulate the beating of his own heart. The same will be true with respect to all the organs that survive the periodic change taking place in the constitution of man. The Eastern holy man can successfully live without his heart beating. He can stop it or start it at will. By lifting the tongue so that he closes the air passage into the lung, he can remain in suspended animation for months. Many Eastern chela, disciples, do this while being given spiritual initiation out of the physical body. There are cases on record where these holy men have been buried in ground. A week later, when the body was dug up, it was found to be dry like leather. water was poured on the earth, and after a certain lapse of time the man who had not taken a breath in weeks got up and walked off. This is the result of extraordinary control which the mind is capable of gaining over the function of the body. Occultism teaches that there is an entire universe within the human body, that it has its world, its plane, and its gods and goddesses. Millions of minute cells are its inhabitants. These tiny creatures are grouped together into kingdoms, nations, races, and become one thing composed of many parts. The supreme ruler and God of this great world is the consciousness in man, which say, I am. This consciousness picks up its universe and moves to another town. Every time it walks up and down the street, it takes 100 million solar systems with it. But because they are so infinitesimal, man cannot realize that they are actually worlds. In like manner, we are individual cells in the body of an infinite creation, which is hurling itself to an infinity at unknown speed. Suns, moon, and stars are merely bones in a great skeleton composed of all the substances of the universe. Our own little lives are merely part of that infinite life throbbing and coursing through the arteries and veins of space. But all this is so vast as to be beyond the comprehension of this little I am in us. Therefore, we may say that both extremes are equally incomprehensible. We live in a middle world between infinite greatness on one hand and infinite smallness on the other. As we grow, our world grows also, resulting in a corresponding increase in the scope of understanding all of this wonder.